The time has come, everybody, to finalize our round of 16 here at the Goliath Gauntlet Flesh and Blood Invitational 2, presented by FAB Cards. I'm Mitch here, joined by Tannon Grace. We've had fantastic games. We've brought, obviously, 16 really exciting prospects in to do battle in the Goliath Gauntlet now. We have one more match to round out this round of 16, and it's an incredible one. The Doctor, Tariq Patel, will be taking on, of course, world's top 4 competitor, Daniel Rutkowski, someone who also was a high flyer at US Nationals. This guy is the real deal, and many people look to Daniel as like the authority on fire play right now. So we're set up for an incredible game, Tannon.
Yeah, damn, Daniel coming back again with the Phi deck, right? You know, the deck that's really been it's the deck that's really been putting him on the map here in the last year. And, you know, Daniel was one of those players that he had a lot of really close finishes, right before in the last couple big ones, where he'd make, you know, a top 16. He'd finish 9th in an event, and he's been looking for that big finish to push him through. And in my eyes, he got it this year, you know, with a couple of runner-ups and a couple of, you know, top 4s. But in his mind, you can tell he's hungry and wants a trophy. He wants to win an event. So this is a great one to win. And there's one thing that I hark back towards. So he made top 4 at Worlds. You mentioned that. And, you know, I was doing coverage at Worlds, and I was not doing the match, if I remember correctly, that he was doing a top 4, but I was like in the feature match area watching it. Yeah. And he loses his match. If I remember right, it was Daniel Ayali who beat him. He, you know, loses a heartbreaker. Sorry, Chris Ayali. Daniel beats over Ayali. And so the match is over. You know, he shakes his hand. He says, you know, great job. Chris goes, commiserates with his friends. And Daniel stays in the seat with the board state in front of him and is like recreating his hand and recreating turns to like figure out. He's like, did I miss some damage somewhere? Like, could I have done something different? And right then and there, like, if I didn't know it, looking at him, I was like, this guy's going to win a world championship. Like, that's the kind of fire that you see out of, like, you know, when you see the professional athletes, like when they lose the Super Bowl, they lose the World Series, and like they watch the other team celebrate, and you know they use that as fuel to make themselves better. And this is what I see when I see this guy play. But the other guy across the field, he's going to be playing against Tariq Patel, you know, the Doctor, as you like to call him. No slouch either.
Yeah, and again, the only player currently in Flesh and Blood history to hold for a brief period of time 2 national championships in different countries. There was a slight overlap, of course, before the North American Nationals was won by Michael Hamilton, and Tariq obviously this time played north of the border and managed to take down the Canadian Nationals. Tariq's a player for me that is really epitomizes what Spike is in Flesh and Blood. He is, you know, drawn to math and decks that really demonstrate an ability to sort of break the rules of the game as often as possible. This guy is serious about being on the best deck. Again, Cheerios Briar, a deck that we really saw Tariq push to its absolute limits and ended up winning a national championship with that one. And then we saw him on Oldham in the Canadian National Championships. And it's going to be much like that today. Let's start with Tariq's deck list here, because, again, we know that Oldham is right now getting a disproportionate share of wins as far as metagame split goes. And this is post the ban restricted announcement where Oldham gets a little bit weaker. This is a pre-ban list to just bear in mind, everybody. This is Oldham at his full strength. Let's talk about this list, Tannon, here. There are definitely a few key cards that we've been discussing because Oldham has begun to take on a more aggressive stance and really make use of a lot of that disruption available to Guardians, along with some really effective generic cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, one of the cards that really stands out here as that card that you were kind of mentioning, Frostfang. You know, you see 3 red Frostfangs in this list, and this is something that started getting a little popular towards Worlds at the end of last year, where the Oldham decks, yeah, it's another ice card. It only blocks for 2, which is generally not something you want in your Guardian decks. You know, you want your cards to block for 3, but this one has an on hit where your opponent has to discard a card unless they pay 2. And that became really important in some of these matchups where you don't just want a straight race or straight turtle up. You want to interact with their hands. When you look at decks like, you know, Phi and Icelander, if you can get a card or 2 out of their hand in some way with this, or say one of the 5 pummels that Tariq is packing this weekend, he's got, you know, 3 red, 2 blue. If any of those triggers happen, that could be enough to swing a game just by 1 card difference happening.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things you can do with these pummels, right? Like you talked about, using it on a Frostfang is very powerful. You force that disruption effect onto an opponent, like Phi in this matchup where it's quite devastating. Command and Conquer and Pummel, one of the most powerful combinations in the entire game of Flesh and Blood. Oldham can do it off of 1 blue, of course, with the Tunic counter available. That's a very scary prospect. That's something you have to be always aware of. Many decks will take like a Crown of Providence to try and shut down that first CNC pummel, but there are many opportunities, within a match to do that. Spinal Crush is a very crucial card here for the Guardian. Being able to turn off your opponent's ability to get go again. The same can be said of Blizzard, which forces opponents to pay to keep go again, and Hypothermia, which switches it off pretty much straight away. And the one last card I want to mention here, which is really interesting, is there's a 2-of exposed to the elements inside this list. It's a bit of a corner case, not a card we see used all the time, but again, being able to destroy your opponent's equipment with sort of -1 counters on it, if they don't pay, can be very powerful, especially because Tariq's going up against a Fi. Fi probably has some of the most high value equipment in the game. Shuko can give you sort of 4 to 6 value out of, buffed up Phoenix Flames over the course of the series. Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is basically worth 6 in and of itself. It's just 6 damage sat on the table for you to use whenever you like. So a lot of really powerful equipment pieces on the side of Daniel Rutkowski. Let's dive into this fire list here and talk it out a little bit, because I think fire list definitely starting to get pretty refined, pretty well decided upon at this point. I will say, Belittle being banned means that Fire will have to look for other options to find that extra resource density. But it's a very key card in a matchup like this, where there might be some frostbites to pay through, Tannon, or some other taxation effects in play.
Yeah, being able to go find a blue if you need it on the turns, because we've seen Fi in the past be able to play 4, maybe attack 4 or 5 times in a turn just from 1 blue in their hand. A lot of zeros, a lot of head jab type cards, and maybe something that costs 1, and then activate their Searing Ember Blade as well during the turn. Not to mention getting back Phoenix Flames. So Belittle going to get a blue, going to be pretty big in this matchup. Belittle's we get Winter Wheel and Belittle in this matchup along with Hypothermia. So maybe some of the last times we'll see these cards in CC. And honestly, I kind of feel a little bit of a good riddance, a little bit. I want to see what comes up from it, but we'll have to find out. Now, there is one Razor Reflex in here as well as a card that can help, bust some stuff through. And there's also 2 Salt the Wound. Uber. Now, depending on what headpiece we use, if it's Mask of Venom or Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, that card goes up in value quite a bit if you got that Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. Yeah.
In this matchup, it has to be Mask of the Pouncing Lynx.
Right.
I think, Tannon, because you can't guarantee 3 hits in a row. Like that's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen against Oldham. Yeah, you're not getting that in. Yeah.
It's like chasing a unicorn. I want to say this deck has a lot of blues in it that are like interesting, like Fluster Fist and Winds of Eternity are cards you expect to see in Katsu because they required to be played after certain cards for that combo effect. It's quite likely it's because they're 0 cost and they're blue that Rutkowski has them in that sideboard. It's unclear if we see them brought in here. And something that interests me is actually a 2-of Engulfing Flame Wave in the deck, a 2 cost for 5, saying when it hits, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an attack action card but costs less than the number of Draconic Chain Links you control, you can actually banish and play it this turn. That 5 breakpoint can be pretty uncomfortable, but that's an expensive card. It's the kind of card you want to, it's the same decision-making process of, do I attack with Ember Blade this turn? It is go again printed on the card, so that is quite nice. I'm curious to see if that comes out towards the end of these chains and, maybe lets Rutkowski go a little bit further. There's a couple non-standard things in both of these lists. That's why I'm very excited to see them go head-to-head. It's going to be 2 opposite sides of the spectrum in Flesh and Blood right now. The very aggressive, the very wide fire deck versus the very defensive, ponderous list with Oldham that can sometimes get a bit more aggressive and force that disruption. It's going to be Daniel Rutkowski going up against Tariq Patel right now.
The Goliath Gauntlet is brought to you by FAB Cards, where reality and fantasy meet. Go to kfabecards.com for all your Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Flesh and Blood needs. FAB Cards. Be who you want to be.
Taking a look at the first thing I always like to look at, Uber, I know you do too, is the equipment suite. I don't think I see any surprises here on either side of the board. Definitely the Mask of the Pouncing Lynx for Daniel Rutkowski. And I don't think I see any surprises here.
Yeah, very standard. Obviously the Pouncing Lynx very much required here just to fetch you some of the extra damage. This is the perfect start, by the way, for Oldham. Very frustrated to see as a 5 player. This is a turn 0 Hypothermia, afflicting Dan, saying that Dan's attacks cannot gain go again. But if his attacks already have go again, then that's okay. So Dan will have the ability to fight through this. It means that cards like Blaze Headlong, though, are turned off. They won't be able to get go again.
And we can see that Tariq here looks to have a really big emphasis towards shutting down those super wide turns. That's a Stalagmite Bastion of Eisenloft as well. Something maybe over the course of a long game against Vi will stop less damage than Rampart, but it's less resource intensive. And then Uber, if you give a Frostbite at the right moment, in the right spot, it can do wonders at keeping you alive. Looks like we got an attack for 4 here to start off from Dan. It's going to be met with a sink below.
Yeah, good timing here for Tariq. Soaring Strike would allow Dan to banish a card from his hand if it's sort of attack with cost less than the number of chain links he controls, and he'd be able to give it go again. It's kind of turned off in this case because Hypothermia would sort of deny that. So Dan's not really that invested in having this hit, and in many cases, Dan's probably not that invested in too many of these cards hitting. What he really wants to do is find big turns, right? Take a turn off here and there, arsenal a card, accept whatever comes his way from the Oldhim, and then try and go for a big 5-card hand like an Art of War payoff, maybe Basket the Pouncing Links involved there as well, and then just start to really pressure this Oldhim away. But just playing a 4 cards each time, Tannon, will be pretty hard for Dan to threaten Oldhim in any way.
I think that's a huge point that the average player might not realize in this matchup. You want to have the 5-card hands as much as you possibly can. The 3-card hands just don't get enough through, or any through. So it looks like an activation of Fi here, and this Phoenix Flame is going to be coming in for 1. Tariq did sink a card from his sink below, so a little bit of card selection added in there as well this turn. So Tariq's hand looking great here to start this game, and if he keeps his life total high, that really sets him up for some of those powerful turns that you've alluded to later in the game as well. Maybe get take a little bit of damage to set up one of those super disruptive turns, and then maybe just take all the tempo from there. But looks like this 1 from the Phoenix Flame is going to get through.
Yeah, I mean, Tariq doesn't have an efficient way to block this. He doesn't have Rampart of the Ram's Head. He also doesn't have an Arsenal card to make use of Crown of Seeds. So it's very inefficient for the Oldhim to do anything about that here. Now, I hope this is a draw. I'm not really sure what Dan's going to prefer to go for here, because I think being able to get an Arsenal card is very important, but yeah, never guaranteed. He actually just wants to push 7 damage here. And Tariq is going to have to let some of this leak through if he has any interest in developing an Arsenal coming into his next turn or being able to swing. So let's see what the play is here. If he stays off Arsenal, like it seems he will, he's able to eat all the damage from the Enlightened Strike for 7.
Looks like, yeah, a block into a sink below, so stop all the 7. And I got to agree with you there. I think that's, Rutkowski's like, yeah, I could maybe draw a card to get an Arsenal here, but the extra 2 damage possibly off this, really getting cards out of Tariq's hand to be good. And for hopefully not the last time ever, Frosty 4 coming across here.
Tariq, I mean, somehow he has 2 cards in his hand still, so I mean, he's chilling. He actually gets to present the 4 damage plus Frostbite and pocket a card, and Dan is playing off an Arsenal here, which means that that 1 Frostbite might be quite disruptive to him trying to push an amount of damage to threaten all of it all. This might have to be like a setup turn coming up now, and he's only pressured 1 damage, and he has to take 4 here.
Yeah, that 4 is going to go through, put Rutkowski down to 36. That Frostbite is going to go across. Tariq with an Arsenal and a 4-card hand here. And we're going to start off this turn with a Brand with Cinder Claw from Daniel Rutkowski. So if the next attack from him here weren't Draconic, it will be now.
Notice these E-Pots come into the deck here in this kind of matchup. Dan, I mean, less likely he's going to have a chance to actually develop them as items, being able to have extra blue pitch in a deck that knows they're going to have to get taxed every now and then is quite helpful. So Frostbite is dealt with here. Brand represents 3 damage and will make his next attack Draconic. Now, this is interesting. A Stalagmite block here.
Well, we've already gotten a pay for 1 thing. Now it looks like Tariq's going to tax him just a little bit more. Maybe trying to make sure he has to give up another card if he wants to attack with that weapon here this turn.
I think Tariq is hoping to keep a bunch of cards in hand to deploy something disruptive and or threatening here. So the thing is that Dan pitches a blue to play this. So I don't know how impactful a Frostbite necessarily is going to be. It does shut down him just going for a Searing Emberblade now, which might be crucial, but Tariq might be trying to keep a higher card density to like pummel a disruptive attack on the next turn.
Yeah, we have to look to see if that's what's going on, and that's a really good read. Uber, so it looks like Tariq down to 38.
So mounting anger here for 4.
So I believe this is a red one. Yep. So it's going to be attacking for 4.
Again, if this does hit, it'll be Dan being able to give one of his Draconic attacks in hand +1 after sort of banishing it. Normally you expect to see the Stalagmite, come out on like an Art of War turn. Like, Tariq obviously believes there's some serious value to be gotten here. or he just wants to keep Daniel quiet if he can and start to go on the offensive. This is kind of equivalent in some senses to pivoting with your equipment, except it has that extra tax effect that Dan must pay through.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's something along those lines. Uber, I think you're absolutely right. Or it's just Tariq making a really early commitment to keeping his life total as high as possible and not letting the tempo get away too much in the game. Because I think both of these decks are really good at pushing their advantage when they have one. Like Fi is really good at, once it starts getting your entire hand in turn, you don't have anything coming back, to continue to do that every turn from then on out, to push its advantage. And the same thing with Oldhim. If they get it to where you're blocking, you're losing by a large amount at that point, because they can just start heaving their hand at you every turn.
I want to point out as well that it's less efficient to use Crown of Seeds basically every turn when you're not also paying a resource for Rampart of the Ram's Head. You're basically having to pitch an entire card to use Crown of Seeds, which is kind of like playing a blue Sync Blow from Arsenal in terms of the damage reduction. So maybe not exactly ideal, or something akin to that. It's definitely less effective. So Autumn's Touch here coming out. One of the few Earth cards that Oldhim really runs these days, is they prefer to go ice heavy and avoid having 2 blocks in the list.
Something to look out for here too. I've played with and against Tariq quite a bit in my career in TCGs, whether it's this game or other ones, and especially when he's playing Oldhim, I think he might be one of the most aggressive hero power users in Oldhim I've ever seen. He really looks for the right spots, and it's always thrown me for a loop every time I've played him. He's definitely hero powered in spots where I wouldn't expect it normally, or I wouldn't think that they were going to do it. And then when I'm surprised by it, it almost always massively disrupts my turn. So maybe that's something we should be looking for here. And it looks like this is going to be a Brahmin Synchron. This is going to be coming in for 4 as well because of that mounting anger trigger.
Yeah, Bran getting to present that extra point of damage is nice for Dan. Putting the extra pressure down on Tariq. And Tariq here obviously has got a 3-card hand, right? So there's a reason why he's clutching.
He's playing this turn a little slow, right, Uber? I think your read is possibly spot on. I wonder if he's gonna maybe give up a little bit of it, decide, maybe I don't need to, but we're gonna have to see, because he's got that Arsenal card and those 3 cards in hand, like you said, and it seems like he's really committed, because we're also going into a Tunic turn as well, so maybe he needs all of these resources available. Maybe it's one of the giant attacks out of his deck. We saw Pulverizes in the list. There's some big stuff that can happen from this deck.
If he has Tunic coming up, he actually only needs 2 cards, sort of plus the Arsenal with the Tunic cannon to like pummel Disruptive on hits. So
it's like a disable.
It's crazy how efficiently you can do it. And sometimes like Oldhim finds himself in a position where he's actually not able to do much with tempo. Dan here trying to pick his spot. So Dan can tell Tariq is trying to maintain card density as much as possible. This is most likely a Lava Burst. Is Salt the Wound. Doesn't get a lot of value for you here. Engulfing Flame Wave will cost 2, so that's out of the question here. And wherever Dan can find a spot to actually turn that mask into extra damage, he'll go for it. Now, this is actually really interesting. I really thought we'd see like a Lava Burst here, and I wonder why, because we've got... I guess these attacks are not fully blocked, so because Mounting Anger and Brand actually did hit and do 1 damage, Salt the Wound becomes a little bit more of an attractive option.
Orbit Home Salt the Wound gains +1 for each attack that has hit this combat chain. It has 2 base power here.
Yeah,
also being free, pretty big deal. So, and this is something I've seen from Rutkowski as well. You see these players really utilize their resources in the right windows, right? And he's like, yeah, I might not get a better turn at using this Salt the Wound, so I might as well do it here this turn. Here we go. We're going to pick up.
This is nice on multiple axes. So first of all, it's going to mean that Tiger Stripe Shuko will activate for the Salt the Wound, and it gives Dan Rutkowski a potential extra chain link of hitting
hits.
Here.
Yeah.
So that means that it actually becomes better than Lava Burst. Lava Burst is 5, right? Maybe +1 if you have the Shuko. Now, this would actually turn the Assault the Wound into 7 if Tariq takes this damage. So really nice play here by Dan. Just putting Tariq in a position where he's forced into blocking these effects that he otherwise might not be interested in. Now, if I'm Tariq, I wonder how I feel about giving the Iron Rot legs here. More likely that Tariq wants to keep Iron Rot to shut down like a red snatch or something that comes in at a break point and could draw Dan a crucial Arsenal card, but I don't mind it here because this Iron Rot legs is actually, it's worth 2 if it blocks the Phoenix Flame, because obviously it's the Phoenix Flame damage plus that extra chain link hitting that would. Salt the Wound. So
you'd be still getting full value for it as if you were to like wait to block for the Salt, or blocks technically, 2 power, but this does
yeah.
the same thing. Plus, if you have any resources left over floating, you still got Crown of Seeds as well, since your turn might be different now than you thought it was going to be,
Yeah.
because you probably weren't expecting to get this wide of a
Oh,
turn from Rutkowski this early.
yeah, Tariq, like that. The question will be like, does Tariq just take it? Because if he can, and then actually like show Dan some really filthy disruption, then it might be worth taking the 6 here from Salt. So
Yep.
this Salt, yeah, comes in for, it is 6. So 3 attacks on the chain of hit, plus Tiger Stripe Shuko. And
Looks like that's going to be a channeling Frigid from hand as well here, and that's a 6 power Salt the Wound. So Tariq's going to be taking a decent bit of damage here this turn. Lots of stuff getting through. It looks like down to 33 here, and quite a wide turn from Daniel.
yeah, I mean, Dan obviously uses his headpiece here to sort of create this kind of attack. I think so, Tariq. So Blue Pummel pitched here, and a channel like Frigid was also in hand. So he might have had hopes of sort of deploying that CLF or something similar. Again, I don't know how he would have kept it around with the sort of ice card, but taking, yeah, okay, he takes damage, but he's only 3 behind, and Dan is priced into eating every win as well if he wants to put any pressure on the Oldham. That's what kind of sucks. It is a warm 4, so that might sweeten the pot a little bit for Daniel, but giving up the cards to eat this win as well and preserve life is just not really something that Fi can afford to do here. So I'm curious. I mean, we'll know a lot about the texture of Daniel's hand here based on how he treats this win as well.
Yeah, exactly. We're to see, does he want to give up a card? Does he have an extra card here? If he has like 2 blues, maybe that's a hand that he'd rather get the 3 life out of the blue than, arsenaling it. But it does look like he's going to do what we kind of expect most of the 5 players to do in this spot, right? Just take the warm 4. There's no frostbite on hit here. So yeah, it's just a generic 4 damage. Tariq's going to have this arsenal still from the last turn. He's going to go into a turn with a tunic counter here, though. So Honestly, it's a little more palatable this turn as well. Now we're going to start off this turn for Rutkowski with a Rise from the Ashes, and this is a red one as well. So this is going to be +3 to the next attack, and that's going to put a Phoenix Flame into his hand as well. Good chance of going pretty wide here and having a lot of power added. So this is going to have 3 power.
Yeah, sometimes just getting to put a 3 power Phoenix Flame here is nice to start off your turn. Sometimes you just need a card that has that onboard go again, so it can transition into a Searing Ember Blade that will then get go again. Because obviously it needs to be the second Draconic Chain Link there. So that's why we sort of see this sequencing from Dan. Again, how do you have a big turn here? I think Dan is definitely hoping for Art of Wars at some stage. I can't tell if Tariq is taunting him with his choice of playmat or not, because his players actually have playmats that really belong on the opposite side of the table. But
that's also the national champion playmat as well from Tariq, so he's showing off a little bit too.
I like that. So yeah, E-Strike for 7.
Showing again that he's going for the extra power here and not the card to put into Arsenal. So a real commitment from Daniel, as long as this game's been going on to, I want to push as much damage as possible all these turns. And is that something you like in this matchup? Because this isn't the traditional Oldhim that you may have come to love or hate early, where it's just turtle up, block, block, block. Like, you look at Tariq's list, like he's trying to attack you back in a lot of spots.
Well, the fact of the matter is that Dan can't. If Dan takes his foot off the gas, he really puts himself at risk of facing back-to-back disruption turns from the Oldhim player. When you're Fi in this case, like your dream, your pop-off turn that that we all imagine, like that 22 plus damage Fi turn, is just not realistic here. Because like Stalagmite gets put in front of one thing and it's just all over. So being able to walk life totals down here as much as possible is going to suit Dan until he can find a spot where he can, deploy an Art of War or find a way to really go above rate and start to put Oldhim on the back foot here. So this is very reasonable. And this is actually one of the reasons why that Enlightened Strike is so potent in this deck. Even off like a very small hand, being able to just throw 7 at your opponent is excellent. And here we're seeing, 13 damage represented from this 4-card hand, which is nothing to sneer at, and it's definitely going to continue to require this Oldhim to make some blocks. And Oldhim doesn't want to always do that anymore. There's always a time where the Guardian wants to, sneak in a little bit of extra damage. Dan also, I mean, some Fi decks do have like the 3 sink below, and that might be a consideration here for Dan to make use of that when that disruption starts to become an issue, because a timely sink below into like a CNC block by 2 cards, or into like a pummel play, can be a really great point to start to stuff that aggression coming across from a Guardian.
Absolutely. And Tariq taking his time here with this one, maybe another hand like he had the turn before where he's loath to give up some cards, really trying to set something up. We've seen that arsenal sitting there for, more than a turn now. Looks like a Glacial Footsteps is going to come in, so it looks like maybe just a block for 3 here. Yeah, no activation of Crown of Seeds. Tariq really wanting this arsenal card, it seems like. So down to 26 is our Oldham player.
He definitely wants to hold on to it. It's probably a CNC. Okay,
yep,
so
and here we go.
Tariq is now, I mean, this is a red flag for anybody playing against the Guardian. Tariq is very clearly, he's telegraphing a pummel here. And that's a backbreaker for Dan. And if Dan were to put 2 cards in front of this, now he doesn't have an arsenal, right? I want to just remind. So it's still 6 damage that can't be de-reacted. I can't believe I said Sink Below could be used against Command and Conquer earlier. That's obviously
it's fine.
Here.
It's fine.
CNC pummel, yeah. So this is like 10 damage and take a card out of your opponent's hand, which is huge. Dan's now down to a 3-card hand. So how on earth does he, start to put real pressure down on Oldham? How does he force Oldham apart with cards? And this is like a little, I guess, a tempo swing. It's a big win on the turn cycle for Tariq because he forces 10 damage, but he gets a card. So he's able to get his quote-unquote 13 of value himself. And it's a discard of the Blaze Headlong.
Yeah, and sometimes the best defense is a good offense, Uber, and we've been seeing that more and more out of the Oldham decks lately. You see cards like Pummel getting put onto CNCs, onto Frostfangs, and just like we were talking about before the show started, this 1 extra card going away, pretty important here. And it looks like a Mounting Anger is going to start off our turn. A blue one's going to get pitched to power up a red Mounting Anger. It looks like this is going to get met by a Sink Below from Tariq. I think this is all 3 sinks from Tariq already in this game.
Yeah, and Tariq's happy because he finds efficient blocks with each one of those sinks, right? They're all coming in to shut down like these 4 power attacks. And Mounting Anger is annoying because it does, you are actually blocking 5 with this Sink Below virtually, given that Mounting Anger can usually pump an attack action card in Dan's hand. And again, you see like the blue pitched and then like a Searing Emberblade come out here. So you're starting to think, well, maybe an arsenal here from Dan. I mean, he can sort of, try and snatch into an arsenal seems fine. Obviously, having to pay for a Phoenix Flame before this snatch isn't great. This is still good though. And again, Tariq, wants to save his some of his blocks for this card. He actually can't really do much about this snatch unless it's a Crown of Seeds activation, but he doesn't have an arsenal, so he can't even do that. It's 2 cards or give Dan a card.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that Tariq hasn't been able to have one of those really efficient blocking turns yet, where he's blocked out all the damage. There's been leaks here or there on almost every attack, and Daniel was about to have one of those turns, the first one in the game, where he's answered very cleanly by the Oldham player, and the Oldham player is going to go back into their turn with cards in their hand. But he's able to finish this chain up here with a 4 power attack, a really, really good break point. Plus the fact that, like you said, draws that extra card, gets that arsenal. That'd be really, really big here. So Tariq going to take a minute and figure out, do I block with a card from hand and an equipment? Do I block with 2 cards from hand? Do I give him the last point of my Stalagmite here? It looks like that's what's going to happen. It looks like a Pummel for 2 and the Crater Fist coming out. You want to hold on to your equipment as long as possible in these matchups, and this is why. This is one of the turns that you really want it for, right, Uber?
Yeah, I mean, Tariq wants to keep being the beatdown now, if he possibly can. So, this tells me that, he wants to make it so, Dan, can I get any extra value? Can I get any extra cards? We deploy a Winner's Whale here. It's Frosty, of course, with the Cold Snap thrown in pitch there. And he can't be too upset about that. Obviously, Cold Snap operates very differently in the Oldham list as opposed to the Icelander one.
Yeah, this is getting pitched almost every single time. Unlike Icelander, where this is one of the cards you want in your arsenal. You actually want to play this one.
It is. It can be kind of nice just because
for sure.
In this matchup, locking up defies Arsenal.
Yeah,
and forcing them to pitch on your turn is quite effective because they can lose a lot of efficiency with that pitch. So, I would suggest it's probably going to be pitched more often, but there are some niche cases where it's really annoying to deal with it.
And Rutkowski is going to take this forward. That's going to give him the Frostbite. And this attack from Winter's Whale is a lot different than the one before, where he kind of just shrugged it off, took the 4 generic. This one coming along with Frostbite, if he doesn't have a blue in his hand, can really mess up his turn. But it does look like that's a blue snatch here that he's going to be able to pay through this Frostbite and get his turn started off nice and quick.
Look, I mean, Dan has all red hands, which is sometimes what Fire wants to see. It's pretty disastrous here. So that kind of explains why we see in Dan's deck list a bunch of blues that maybe don't have an ostensible sort of justification for being in the deck, like these sort of combo cards.
These energy potions. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the E-Pot. I mean, the E-Pot's a gas if you have to take a turn off. But Dan never wants to do that. And it's frustrating. Fire is playing off his arsenal. It's a very different style of play as opposed to like an aggro race, because he just can't afford to let Tariq in. He has to keep the pressure up. Tariq, I mean, he's playing cards like Cold Snap. So this Oldham deck has less of those 3 blocks than maybe like more traditional builds of it would have. This Rise of Resentment here gets to come in for a little bit of damage, just a little one.
Yeah, this is a blue one as well. This is a blue heavy hand from Daniel here. The Searing Ember Blade did connect though, so Tariq is down to 23. So like totals getting a little bit closer, 23 to 18 here. We're getting close to that end game, Uber, where Rutkowski, if he puts together a really big turn, can put Tariq on. Here we go. This is what I'm talking about. We get an ice reaction here in the blocker step, so it's going to get that last card from Daniel here. He's going to have to put that on top of his deck, and he won't get an arsenal here.
It hurts. That's pretty frustrating for Daniel here. I mean, I think Daniel can still yoink out a Phoenix Flame,
right,
and try to do something with that, which would also, I think, trigger the Shuko, which is nice. Man, this is what happens when you can't force Oldham to block enough, man. He just says, okay, well, bye-bye Arsenal.
Yeah, this is something that doesn't come up very much. This is an instant ability from Fi. So in response to the defensive reaction from Tariq here, Rutkowski's going to go ahead and put a card into his hand here, and I'll have to see how he wants to play from here.
Well, I wonder what card he put on top there, Tannon.
Yeah, it could be anything, Uber.
I love that. Like being able to yoink out the Phoenix Flame to pop on top is great to do that in response. Little minutia there. There's also like a ton of weird windows at which you can actually get a Phoenix Flame with fire.
I've done it through my opponent's turn before, and it was like really strange.
End of their turn, after past priority or something like that. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I didn't know why.
I don't remember why. Yeah, I don't remember why. It doesn't come up very often, but this is a really good attack here to end the turn. We talked about this quite a bit. This is another snatch in the turn. This is a red one. Attacking for 4, demanding possibly multiple things from Tariq here. But if he has a block 3, he's got that plus Crater Fist, so we'll see.
Dad just gets the Phoenix Flame back.
Yeah, I know, right?
So funny. It's going to be the Crater Fist again. Yeah. Throw it in front.
You've got to be a little heavier incentivized to block here, knowing that there's a Phoenix Flame on top of the deck, right?
Or you just don't want to let Dan get away with that. Basically, it means he's not punished at all by the Ice React. I mean, a Phoenix Flame in Arsenal doesn't exactly inspire much courage, but it's still a card and it still has value, and Dan can do a lot of things with that. So Tariq forced to give up some cards here, and Daniel gets the draw up.
Yeah,
a lot of that equipment now gone.
Yeah, speaking of Arsenal, that's all Tariq did with his turn. Yeah, the last card. So he's up to 4 cards with an Arsenal here, and we're back over to Dan Rutkowski. But we do know one of those cards is a Phoenix Flame in his hand, so maybe his range just a little bit smaller and shorter than normal in this turn. We're going to start off this turn with a Rising Resentment coming in for 3.
I think the issue is as well is that for Daniel, I think there's no other Phoenix Flame in his graveyard because he's not Flame Call Awakening in this game.
Right.
So he cannot Fire ability to get a Phoenix Flame back, if I'm not mistaken, because that singleton that started in his graveyard is now in his hands. So efficient block here, Macho Grande eats up the Rising Resentment, and the aforementioned Phoenix Flame gets in for 1.
Yeah, that one's going to get in a lot. Until Tariq's life total gets really, really low, he's not going to be interacting with that card if he can avoid it. We saw maybe on the Salt the Wound turn, you want to interact with it.
He's breaking the chain. I wondered if he'd do this. Now, the reason why... Okay, so Blaze Headlong still gets that go again. He's doing this so he can potentially get the Phoenix Flame back out. Very rare that you see Fi break the chain because obviously there are a lot of... He's incentivized to have a long combat chain. But if this is like a pitch blue into Searing Ember Blade, pull out the Phoenix Flame, like I guess for 1, that is all right.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's a pretty esoteric line to take. He gets 1 damage here leaking through.
Yeah, Thunderquake's going to go ahead.
He's doing it.
He does have the blue. It looks like a Minnowism that's going to go ahead and pay for the Searing Ember Blade. There's 1 left over. That Phoenix Flame is going to be coming in behind this, but it looks like another... Is that a Disable, I think? Or whatever. It's going to be a block for 3.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be a block for 3 from Tariq here, and then here comes the Phoenix Flame in for 1.
This is making lemonade, my friend.
Yeah, for sure.
And Shuko actually triggers off of the second attack action card to unless you play each turn, not on the combat chain. So you can break the chain and still get the +1. I love this from Dan. Every last point of damage he could possibly find, he is squeezing out of this hand.
If you wanted to learn how to play Fi, there's a lot of people way worse than Daniel Rutkowski that you could be watching. This is just Fi at its best. Every time I watch him, he's eking out every little bit that he can. And you have to with these decks, especially against a player of the caliber of Tariq Patel. If you give him any quarter, any extra little inch, he's going to take a mile and punish you for it. So back over to Tariq. He's got a couple cards left in his hand here. Got that Arsenal. So he pitched a Rouse the Ancients to attack with the Winter's Wail here. Now this is a warm 4. You know what, Uber? I'm not gonna be able to say warm and cold 4 anymore going forward, and it's sad, man. I'm gonna pour one out for Winter's
you're
Wail.
gonna just have to find another way of talking about Oldham attacking. I'm sure you can come up with Titan's Fist. I'm sure there's some fun word play you can do with
We're not gonna
Titan's Fist.
We're not gonna go down that one.
I'm sure.
We're not gonna go down that road.
I mean, I'm not mentioning anything in particular. I'm sure someone like yourself could come up with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's some creative people out there. But all right, we're gonna start off this turn with a Soaring Strike for Daniel Rutkowski. That's coming in for 4. 2 floating as well. The Searing Emberblade, you got to believe, is going to be.
I kind of like
following
this.
Up.
Soaring Strike is super fun because it comes in at a break point and it can give a snatch go again. So that's pretty sweet. Especially when then that means you don't have to like end your turn with it. You can actually have like an above rate turn or have a turn where you can sort of draw more cards here. Tariq's on. Okay, so he's on finally using Crown of Seeds. First time here. He wants to eat the break point because he's definitely concerned about like a good card getting go again. Sort of forcing like a kind of longer turn here. So I kind of get this. It also gives E-Strike go again, by the way. Super dirty. If you hit with Soaring Strike. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
7 go again is like quite nice. So we'll see. Yeah, first activation of Crown here off the Tunic, and this will be a block for 4 with it. Glacial Footsteps put in front.
That's one of the dirtier ones you can get. If you can get a Snatch, obviously, because like with Snatch, it's so weird, right? Like you have to end your turn with it a lot to maybe fill your arsenal. But in card games, especially ones like this, when you draw extra cards, that's one of the first things you want to do in a turn if you can, because you want to get all the information before you make choices. And if you can get it earlier in a turn than normal, that's absolutely huge. So it looks like we're gonna have another Ice React from Tariq here as well, while we're still in the blocker's face. Daniel's down to 1 card here. Still get that Phoenix Flame possibly this turn.
This is why Oldham's so powerful. Dan took 4 damage in order to create a turn like this. So now he has to find a way to sort of like win on the turn cycle. Flamecall Awakening here is going to be able to fetch him a Phoenix Flame, which is going to mean that he gets to put in more instances of this little poke damage, this Kodachi situation.
Yeah, there's also another thing here too. If he were to search his library for, his deck for one of those cards as well, he gets to shuffle away that card on top of his deck. So he's not stuck into drawing it. But I was going to say, I don't know if I've seen him search his deck yet. Maybe he's deciding not to because he wants that card back.
I'm not sure why that would sort of be.
This was a red Soaring Strike, right? Yep.
The red Soaring Strike was the first attack on the chain. Got blocked out. 4 life deficit here. I think Dan in general is happy to walk life totals down to an extent. This probably suits him fine because getting Oldham in a position, Oldham frankly can't block all of Fire's damage every turn. It's not viable. Eventually we get like a Phoenix Flame nibbling here and there, and that sort of attrition is what Fire is sort of trying to leverage here, I think, to keep this game close.
And when the game is this close and life totals are getting this low, the card that's blocking right now is really important. The fact that there's 6 Glacial Footsteps in this deck from Tariq, this is one of the attacks that, it has Ice Fusion, and if you fuse, it gains Dominate. This can actually end the game if Rutkowski starts to get himself down to the 8 range, the 10, 8, 6 range. It can end the game in a turn where he might be thinking he's going to be able to block correctly. So Glacial Footsteps, definitely a card to keep in the back of your mind here when you start getting really low against these Oldham builds.
So I have to wonder what Tariq is sort of thinking on at the moment. There are like a large number of 2 blocks in this list now. All the Pummels are 2 blocks, Winter's Bite's 2 blocks, Cold Snap, Frostfang, Hypothermia is a 2 block, Exposed doesn't block at all.
Blizzard
it might be
block,
a matter of, okay, well, Tariq should know, okay, well, I'm going to see my opponent grab a Phoenix Flame regardless. So that's something I need to consider. That means that Daniel is well positioned to get value off his Tiger Stripe Shuko this turn. So Tariq is trying to figure out how much damage he's likely to take, and the Blizzard getting deployed here now. Tariq used his Crown this turn, so he's really hoping to keep like a relatively robust hand to, again, even just a Frosty 4 would be crazy good for him at this point. So Blizzard pay or lose go again.
So it does look like he was doing this before the search, I'm guessing. So this is a timing thing from Tariq. So, we're talking about Rutkowski hadn't really searched up the Phoenix Flame out of his deck yet. This is so he doesn't have the card in his hand to pitch possibly to the Blizzard. So this is going to take the go again away from Flamecall Awakening as well.
Yeah, pretty important. It's also something you'll see Icelander and Oldham players do midway through the little searching up a Minnowism, forcing them to pay before they can put the Minnowism in their hand. So I don't think that, from what I can see, Dan paid for this, right?
Maybe. Let's see. Yeah.
There's no like cheeky Flamescale Furnace stuff he can do this turn because he sort of pitched a blue, which is, again, for Fi, that's why like Flamescale maybe has less value than it does for Dromar, because Fi not quite as redline and quite often wants to pitch a blue, especially in a matchup like this, probably sideboarding extra blues in order to do that. So Tariq says, I'm going to sort of block, I'm going to shut you down now. This Blizzard sort of at least blocking 3 damage, maybe more. Dan not being able to pay through it. And here is a nice big Enlightened Strike. This has got to be for 7.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to put the card at the bottom here. This looks like it is going to be, yep, the +2 for Tariq there. So it looks like it is going to be for 7.
And this is scary now for Daniel, because he, obviously this accounts for half of his life total here. So he needs to sort of think very carefully on how much of this or if he sort of eats this. Getting to keep an Arsenal card might be a blessing. We kind of, we have an idea of what Daniel was able to put in his hand, of course, with that Flame Call Awakening. So he has to ask himself, is this hand able to return more than 7 damage with Oldhim blocking? Like, I have to say, probably not.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some form of blocking from Rutkowski here.
The issue is that as good as Tiger Stripe Shuko is at blocking, it's Blade Break. So first time that card defends, it's going to get destroyed. He cannot benefit from that extra effect anymore, which is, I'm getting the feeling, again, not a matchup that I personally play a whole lot, but I'm getting the feeling that the Shuko is a really important engine in actually helping walk these life totals down against an opponent like Oldhim. Buffing that sort of otherwise very innocuous Phoenix Flame coming in the second time.
I was going to say, yeah, it can be really important, especially against cards like Rampart of the Rem's Head or Crown of Seeds, if they start to get into that kind of back and forth with you, Attack of my Hammer. If you get to the point where Attack with Hammer is really good, and then you can start setting up an Arsenal of Crown, or you have Ram's Head every turn, you need to be able to make your Phoenix Flames be real attacks. And 1 isn't enough in a lot of these spots, so it is going to be 2. So it does look like this is a block from Rutkowski as well. Is going to go down to 10, keep that life total at least a somewhat manageable spot. He's still got his equipment, like you said. We talked about this a couple turns ago. You got to be a little worried about giant dominate attack coming at some point, so got to keep it up there at least a little bit. And it looks like we're going to have a Belittle get triggered here this turn.
This is nice. It means that Dan can play around the Stalagmite, still having 1 sort of durability this turn. I expect this is might be a blue minnow getting picked up here. Yeah, so it means that the Searing Emberblade is definitely on the cards. Plus, there's another Flame Call in the hand. We're going to start juggling Phoenix Flames pretty quickly here. So Dan might have a way to squeeze some damage around the corner of Oldhim's defenses here. This is the first time we've seen this Belittle all game. There's 5 copies in the deck for Dan. 3 red and 2 yellow. So he's going to be very happy to sort of get use of this now, but I'm sure part of him wistfully hoping that he would have seen it a little bit earlier in the game. Still makes it harder to disrupt. Remember, there's no Arsenal for the Crown of Seeds here. So the blocks get a little bit more standard for Oldhim. And I don't know too many decks that can sit there with 4 cards and block out a fire turn with Arsenal. So Dan is looking to make the sparks fly here.
Absolutely. And with very a very innocuous hand to start with, right? But this is the power of Belittle, the power of Flame Call Awakenings, the fact that it's not just the fact that, this card attacks for 3 for free. You've got these extra cards coming from behind, so you get extra resources. You can pay through your turn. You can keep going wide. You can trigger your Shuko. You can attack multiple times with Phoenix Flames. You can make sure your Soaring Emberblade can come in and stuff like that. So very important that you have these kind of wide turns. And like you said, it's been kind of absent a few times from Dan. So he's very happy to have this happen. Now it looks like Anonymous Touch has come into block. Now the Flame Call Awakening is going to happen. It's going to go get that last Phoenix Flame out of the deck. That's definitely a good thing as well, Uber, not to be overlooked, the fact that you can't draw this card anymore. Is there one left over, or were they already gone?
Oh, I think you might be right. Yeah, I think that Daniel had one in his graveyard last turn, and he yoinked one out of the deck, and then he's now yoinking another one out of the deck. So, he has 2 Phoenix.
He only has 2, yeah. So it looks like there are none left. Okay. Just making sure, though. Nothing wrong with that. I've been in this spot before and been unsure. I'm like, let me make sure. Like,
I mean, yeah. Crucially, I don't know how important it is. I don't think I've ever heard of a 5 pitch stacking. I don't think that's really a thing. But again, I think you can fail or find, and you can still shuffle for God knows what reason. Dan would ever want to do that.
It can come up in this matchup with as much as ice reactions as Tariq can bring in. We talked about this earlier. If you put a card on top of your deck that you don't want to draw next turn, this is a good way to get rid of that card and get you a fresh one on top.
Yeah. So Tariq's still, I think, deciding about this block, right? He has 3 cards in hand. He laid them down just before. He's probably trying to do a little bit of math here, figure out just what's coming his way. I think Ice React here is not amazing, as we kind of know what that would really do to Daniel. Not a whole ton, I imagine.
Also, I mean, Tariq's thinking more than just blocking here, right? Like, yeah, he's got to protect his life total. He wants to make sure, but he can't just block here. He's got to be thinking about, what he comes back with, right? Is that also a thing that he's thinking about during these turns when he's making sure that he blocks? He's thinking about offense as well.
Absolutely. He wants to try and close the game. Obviously, Daniel's falling into like a dangerous place, but Daniel still has 4 block worth of equipment here. So just throwing like a dominated Glacial Footsteps isn't really going to cut it.
Right.
Tariq wants to do is, again, throw some disruption Daniel's way and make it very, very hard for, Fire to start being threatening. All of a sudden, Fire's only asking for 1-2 cards from the Oldhim every turn. And that's where Oldhim can start to get more aggressive and start to force more damage. So the Enlightened Strike plan is off the table as Tariq puts it on the table, blocking this
Nice.
Flame Call Awakening. And Searing Emberblade comes in next. This will require a pitch from Rutkowski. And of course, a Blue Minnowism in hand is going to be in the job.
It looks like they're going to be finishing this turn off with one of those Phoenix Flames, but we still got those 3 coming across that Tariq needs to deal with. So trying to decide how he wants to do this. How does he want to block? Does he want to leave a card left over for Arsenal? Do you want to leave a card left over to Winter's Wail? It looks like he's going to take this down to 12. He's got to know that these, I was going to say, this Phoenix Flame is coming in behind this as well. Still get the Fi ability as well behind this, so Tariq down to 11. Activate the Fi, and this will be attacking for 2, I believe, this turn as well.
Yeah. So I think Tariq is priced into the pattern of swing with Winter's Wail and Arsenal at this point. So 2 cards was as many that he really wanted to give, and that's that. So that means, yeah, Daniel's able to find the value out of both those Phoenix Flames there, actually leak a little bit of damage through. Again, it's a turn he ends without having an Arsenal card, but still able to put a fair bit on the table, and this is what I mean, just leak a little bit of damage around Oldham's defenses. I would say that Tariq is, I imagine it's a Winter's Wail and Arsenal here. Keeping 2 cards without Tunic counter up, like it might limit some of his options in terms of offense. We'll see what he goes for.
It does look like this is going to be a cold 4 as well. That's huge. The fact that Tariq had a ice blue here. This is an actual threat for Dan, more than just the 4 life here.
At what point does Daniel go chest piece, arm piece, block 4, don't get a frostbite?
Just throw my hand back at you? Yeah, exactly.
Maybe Art of War and 3 cards is enough for him to go, all right, it's go time. Turning a lot of those 3 attacks into breakpoints, right? Going to 4 on all of those attacks is pretty big. Against an opponent in Tariq, who's demonstrated he wants to keep a couple of cards in hand where he can. Tariq will have Crown of Seeds, though, obviously available with the card in Arsenal, so it might make some of those breakpoints easy to manage, and Stalagmite still is in play, so it might just be that Dan finds Art of War, Tariq goes, give you a Frostbite, try and end your turn here. Really shrink the size of what can often be like a very wide, very threatening turn from Fire with that card.
Yeah, you can see that all of that weighing on Rutkowski's mind here. These players getting really low. Daniel at 10, Tariq at 9. This game could end anytime soon, so no player wants to make a misstep here. They want to make sure they maximize every card in their hand. So he's going to take his time here, see what kind of block he wants to do. Like you mentioned, he's still got 2 of these equipment pieces that can block pretty efficiently here, but one of them still pretty important to his plan to get through these last couple points of damage. I mean, that Shuko, you want to keep that around as long as possible if you can. The game, these Phoenix Flames, you need to make sure they're actual real threats at killing Tariq.
This is 40% of Daniel Rutkowski's total life and a Frostbite, which would be very punishing if he's drawn up into a red hand. He really has to decide now whether this is the turn. Is this the turn he's able to really go nuts? Or both these players walk each other down just a little bit further until Daniel finds a silver bullet or Tariq goes over the top with a dominate effect or a very punishing pummel to end the game. Because eventually, Winter's Wail plus pummel starts to become a real legitimate threat. Red pummel here is a total of 8 damage being threatened, and while it doesn't give Tariq the ability to force Daniel to discard, there's still big damage.
Oh, for sure. And you kind of alluded to this. Another thing that has to be in the back of Rutkowski's mind here is when he goes back over to Tariq next turn, that Tunic's going to be at 3. So that means that's a free Crown of Seeds activation during one of the turns as well. And that makes it a lot harder. And here you go. You called it, Uber. It just took a little while for Daniel to come to the same conclusion since he has more information than you do. It's going to be, yep, here you go. You got both of my equipment.
Yeah. This is that moment that Rutkowski wants to try and
Well, here we go.
Here. How interesting. Okay, so pitching a blue to Phoenix Flame on Tariq's turn. How often have you seen this one?
Not very often. This is something that you see maybe once every like 20, 30, 40, games of FI. Not super often. Without seeing all the cards in hand, I'm going to see if we can get the exact reason why. But
it's got to be too many blues, right?
Yeah, it's something along those lines. And if it's Rutkowski doing it, you got to believe it's correct, right? So he's going to start off with that Phoenix Flame. Now, this is attacking for 0, but this does start the chain link, which is important for a lot of the cards in Rutkowski's deck. And this is something that I had to find as a FI player, that sometimes you just have to attack with the Phoenix Flame for 0. So yeah, it does look like there's another blue in hand here that's going to power up that Searing Ember Blade, and that's coming across for 3.
Yeah, like you said, you need a go again starter if you want to have a Searing Ember Blade on Chain Link 2.
Mm-hmm.
And sacrifice a bit of damage here. Dan obviously is trading in that extra blue card for the ability to do so. So now, I mean, his turn is live for sure. It is a whole card being used just to basically enable that Searing Ember Blade, which costs 2 in and of itself. But Dan has to try and derive some form of pressure out of what we saw to be a pretty blue heavy hand. This also means that there's a chance to bring another Phoenix Flame back, and then you got it. Tiger Strike Shuko is well, actually used it last turn, so it can't benefit from it here. But that would be a case where you could still basically neutralize the damage loss from playing a 0-cost Phoenix Flame. Here, though, it's just going to be coming in for 1 after the fact if he can get it out of his yard. So
really tight play from Dan Rutkowski to notice that. This is from his hours and hours and hours of studying the blade. He's gone into the lab and he's come out being a FI master, and this is a little thing here or there. Hey, at the end of your turn, I'm gonna get this Phoenix Flame back because this was a once per turn instant. So now I'm gonna be able to do this during my own turn as well. Great catch there, Uber, and great catch from Dan to be able to Daniel to be able to find this out. It looks like we've got a Blizzard getting played from Arsenal here. So Tariq not using that Arsenal for Crown of Seeds this turn. This is gonna get played out of it. So this is gonna be a Blizzard targeting that Searing Ember Blade. Either need to pay 2 or that go again goes away. And this might be a slight punish for Daniel as well for, he might have had a blue heavy hand, but he's used 2 of them already.
I think it's more than a slight punish. I actually think this is devastating.
Yeah,
for
that's a lava burst
to Daniel here. Yeah, that lava burst would have been live on this turn. He gave up his 2 equipment pieces for a turn like this.
Yes.
So he was really hoping to pivot. Now giving up what may have been the silver bullet in the form of that lava burst is pretty brutal stuff for Daniel to have to deal with. Bear in mind, Lava Burst needs to be played at Chain Link 4 or higher. But he had 1 floating, so he could get a Phoenix Flame out of his graveyard and then Lava Burst after that and actually push some damage here. So, I mean, that's a big call. Tariq, I don't know how much damage he saved with the play of that Blizzard. We'll probably find out at the end of the turn. But Dan says, I have to keep going if I possibly can. But it might just be like a 0-cost attack, a Phoenix Flame from the yard. That's a total damage presented of 7.
And let's see if that's going to be good enough to keep this game going for him because, he's dealing with Tariq. Tariq's got 4 cards left in his hand, and he's going into a Tunic turn as well. So he's going to have that extra resource if he wants to get off one of those big attacks, or if he wants to, just maybe swing the hammer again, set up an arsenal, have the Crown of Seeds arsenal play for free, and maybe play with a 5-card hand into Daniel Rutkowski's hand in that turn, and that can be extremely dangerous. So I think this is like one of the penultimate turns of this game. This is where the game's getting decided from here on out. This is the game that breaks the back, or this is the turn.
So that card was from Arsenal. Tariq still 4 in hand. With the Tunic counter coming up next turn, there is a myriad of possibilities offensively that Tariq can actually opt for here. But he needs to decide just how relevant is this 3 damage. What comes next from Rutkowski? I mean, if it's like a Blaze Headlong, that's pretty good. Probably one of the best options. Or like a Snatch from Rutkowski. Also very, very powerful. Danny's looking.
I think what's happening here is
his own yard.
Tariq might have asked him to look through his yard for the very reason that you're mentioning. He wants to know how many snatches are left, how many blaze headlong, like how many of the big plays are left after this. Because I think there's part of Tariq that just wants to eat this and then come back with like a fully powered turn, possibly set up an arsenal and try to win from there. You know, maybe set up something to be able to close the game out from that moment. So he's really weighing all of his options here. Like you said, pitch stacking not mattering here. Have you ever played against Tariq?
No, thank God.
So it's one of the most intimidating things that's ever happened to me in a card game. So Tariq knows his own pitch stack, right? But I remember in one game I made some play and Tariq was like, "Hey, hold on, no, don't do that. Do this instead." And I was like, "Why would I do this instead? Like, you know, explain it to me because like explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old because I practically am when I'm playing against you." And he's like, "Well, you're going to draw this, and this next turn. It's better to have this saved up for next turn than use it this turn." I'm like, "Wait, you were following my pitch stack as well?" And he's like, "Yeah, like why wouldn't I be?" So like not only does he know yours, he knows his opponents as well, which it's not going to come up in this game, but I just want everyone at home to know what it's like to play against someone like Daniel Rutkowski or Tariq Patel in these games. And it does look like it is one of those big attacks coming in behind this after the Spinal Crush comes in to block the full amount. This is a 4-powered snatch, Uber.
Yeah, so
Huge
probably
find.
the best card that Rutkowski could have had here, being able to sort of end his turn. I don't think
This is huge.
I don't think he snaps on this, but we might be getting to the point where we want to slow Tariq down a little bit. And this is probably what Tariq wanted to know. Do you have any snatches left? Maybe also Rutkowski was looking at his graveyard trying to figure out what he might or may not have a chance of drawing into, because that might influence his decision of, I've seen it happen. I don't think it's something that, you know, good players will habitually do is you know, Snapdragons your snatch and just see what there is.
Yeah,
because you know, you cannot get a free Phoenix Flame. This is not a Draconic Chain Link. So I have to imagine it's just to allow Dan to have a chance at having a bigger turn.
Yeah, you get to ask the ambiguous question now in gaming. Do we snap here?
There's no way. It wouldn't make any sense for Daniel to do that. I was once told, obviously Refraction Bolters operate pretty similarly to like, you know, Snapdragons in the Dorinthia deck. And I'm told by a lot of good Dorinthia players is they can tell how good you are based on like how late you're able to hold off on using your bolters. And I feel like that's not the case in like a lot of situations here, but I think in this matchup, you know, Daniel wants to turn those snaps into like another big break points worth of damage or something that's potentially really punishing.
What you're saying is the fact that I use it on like my first or second turn almost every time, that's not a good thing?
I don't know. Actually, it really depends on. It honestly depends on what you're playing. I've seen people do it. I've seen Briar players do it, for example, as well. I guess if you want to get ahead in like a race matchup and have like an above rate start to the game to have tempo, it seems fine. Tariq reluctantly parting here with the Command and Conquer, and Stalagmite gets thrown in there just to make sure that extra card. And this is really Dan getting squeezed. Tariq says, "I refuse to let you have anything for free."
Yeah, that's going to be a full block out for Tariq here. Huge find for Daniel Rutkowski there. The fact that the last card was a snatch, that keeps him in this game. That was absolutely huge. Now, a blue card left over, that's a Hypothermia. While great in play, I think attacking with a Cold Winter's Wail here on this spot, a little better, more palatable for Tariq. Plus, he's going to be able to put a card in that arsenal, and he's got that Tunic up to 3 here. So both these players, you know, I thought this game was going to widen a little bit over the last turn. I felt like it tightened up just a little bit. Rutkowski's going to go ahead and take it. So that Frostbite's going to cut him across all 4 damage. Rutkowski's all in on these 4 cards. He needs these to be good and get him into this game.
Blocking a Winter's Wail as a 5 player seems like the most unpalatable experience possible. Probably a blue pitch here. Okay, so he does have the blue. That makes it much less of a problem. Mounting Anger being presented first here.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that, you know, if this does hit, might be able to power up that next attack as well. So a lot could go on here. And it looks like this is going to go ahead and prompt the Crown of Seeds activation from Tariq. You got to understand why. This is going to make that break point back down to 3. So he's going to be able to get a cleaner block here. Also, operating with a 5-card hand. Can't overstate enough how important it is to have hands like this out of the Oldham deck. You know, up to 5, you get so many choices here. You get so much extra info. And then I've got to wonder how long this Tunic is left for this world. Because if you don't think you're getting another resource out of it this game, the first time you can get a decent block with it, I think this Tunic's going to come out as well. But Macho Grande going to go ahead and block full out here, and then the aggressive Tariq Patel with the defensive reaction. You got to love it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it makes it very, very hard. Tariq says, "I'm happy to pitch this card because I think that I'm getting, probably 4 value for it potentially, if not more. So Dan's pitched one, played one, put one on the top of his deck. That means he's got 1 card left. Now, if he ends up, okay, so he's going to go with the Searing Emberblade, likely to get close to the end of the turn. He will, 2 Draconic Chain Links, be able to conjure up another Phoenix Flame and make another unpalatable block decision for Tariq. Again, Tariq right now is operating on 3 cards, I think, in his hand?
4, right? Oh, no, he's got a block and a pitch.
Spot.
Yes, yeah. So he's down to 3. Yeah. So he still can block here, take the 1, and then be able to do Winter's Wail plus, a Arsenal as well. Just great setup here for Tariq. Those 5-card hands are so powerful.
So Rutkowski dies to a dominated Glacial Footsteps here. That's one thing that can end him. Obviously, like there are many interactions where Pummel's involved that can also get him, just because he's pretty reluctant to be blocking. Again, like this next time a Winter's Wail gets put in front and Tariq can represent Pummel, Daniel will probably have to think about blocking that in some way, shape, or form. He's basically priced into blocking every Winter's Wail from here on out, unless Tariq only has like a 2-card hand, right? Or less, right?
Yeah. And Tariq took the 3 here, keeping those 3 cards in his hand. 6 apiece here. Activation of the Phi hero. It's going to go ahead, get that Phoenix Flame out. We're going to come in for that little cheeky amount.
Getting to poke here is still important.
Looks like it's going to be an Arsenal. There we go. Yeah. I think looking to get a bigger turn, Rutkowski is next turn. Maybe get some of those break points. Maybe get 4 or 5 attacks on the chain if you can somehow survive the turn. Like if it's not a cold 4, like if it's just Winter's Wail, but it looks like this is going to be an attack. This is a Thunderquake.
Yep, this is a lot. This is 2 cards from Daniel. Yep, he must block 2, and also, I mean this is kind of, maybe Daniel was anticipating that. That's why he opted instead to stick a Phoenix Flame in Arsenal here. This is serious damage, and this is what happens when you let that Oldhim player keep that 3-card hand. Now, I don't think Tariq would have given Daniel a card if he attacked with that 1-power Phoenix Flame last turn. But that's definitely like a decision point that Daniel probably had to make. And from this point onward, you are probably now very much on the back foot. Tariq can probably win the game by just presenting a Winner's Wail until Dan has such a bad turn that Tariq can just like take 2 or 3 damage and then have like an inevitability situation with a Pummel. So this is bad news, Bears. Make no mistake.
Absolutely. And you see why Tariq was so inclined to keep all 3 cards in his hand here. This is a 10 power attack. This is going to get the double block from Daniel, and he's going to go down to 1. So he's going to try to make do with what he's got left over here. 2 cards in his hand. He's got that Arsenal that we know about. That is a Phoenix Flame. So can Daniel put together a turn here that keeps him alive for another turn?
I mean, those are very powerful cards that just departed from Daniel's hand. The Belittle, of course, we've seen what it can do in terms of giving him that extra resource. And of course, losing that Lava Burst there means that there's no payoff for that long chain, which we've seen very hard to put together with Ice React being a threat. But this puts, Rutkowski in a position where his turns become less and less threatening, right? Really starting to shrink them now by forcing him to block. And he's basically got to full block everything now. I think he's in deep trouble.
Absolutely, yeah.
Named his deck list when he sent it to me, Math.
Nice.
Math. And I think that's really how he approaches this matchup. And you can see it's very straightforward. Block efficiently, leak damage constantly against your opponent, make it more expensive for them to play the game. And then when it's time to close out, present a Thunderquake, and then maybe another, big, scary attacking turn when Dan does not have the cards to force you to respect him.
Absolutely. Speaking of those cards that are getting attacked, this is a Soaring Strike to start out with. This is attacking for 4. It looks like it's going to be met with a Channel Lake Frigid from Tariq. Very powerful card in the matchup, but I think we're past the point of Channel Lake Frigid here. We're going to be attacking if we're Tariq. It's going to be followed up by that Searing Emberblade as well. Having a blue left over in Daniel's hand here, very powerful. Going to let him attack with 2 things. Tariq's going to go ahead and take this down to 2.
Yeah.
This makes me wonder about the rest of Tariq's hand.
Makes me think that Dan is absolutely 100% dead.
Yeah. Tariq's going to go down to 1 each. Here's another Phoenix Flame. There's a Tunic over here. Yeah, this is the Tunic block because there's no longer the Shuko.
I mean, if Shuko's in play, this looks vastly different.
Oh, for sure.
Vastly different.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think Daniel Rutkowski knows it's now time to face the music.
The writing is on the wall. Yeah, a quick 2-pitch here and another red Thunderquake. This is another 10. I don't know if Daniel's going to be able to get out of this one. He does have one extra block on an equipment here. He might be able to give the whole hand, but that's also pretty much the same as losing at this point.
Even the whole hand may not necessarily be sufficient to block this out. We'll have to see. Obviously, like if because obviously there's a lot of 2 blocks in this deck. Art of War. Okay, we're gonna get defensive here.
Okay, so we're gonna be digging here. So everything's gonna get pumped up by 1 here on defense. So Art of War,
and we're gonna banish and draw 2 by the looks of things. So this is this means that Daniel can turn those 2 blocks into 3 blocks, and obviously 3 blocks into more. But a defensive Art of War is the first time we've seen Art of War from Daniel this game. It's being used very much on the back foot.
Yeah, I was actually going to make a point after the match, if we got to it, that, hey, we never saw Art of War in this match. And that's a pretty important card in this one. So it does look like the triple block here from hand is going to be enough to take the full 10, it looks like. Yep. If you double check here, just make sure.
And wounding blow actually is more than, So
there we go, full block out. And then we're just going to go wash, rinse, and repeat here. We're going to go right back over to Tariq.
Wow, and now your Guardian player has all the tempo, 4 card hands to play off of. Sometimes Oldham struggles to do anything with tempo, but I saw a spinal crush.
Yeah, I think I saw another big power attack here. That's a 9. Let's see if there's something better from Tariq here. Does he have something like Glacial Footsteps here? But no, it looks like it's just going to be the spinal. Pitch 2 cards. Going to let him have an arsenal here as well. But here's a 9. That's the first thing that's happened. Can you answer 9 if you're Daniel Rutkowski? He had a hard time answering 10 last turn. Let's see if you can answer 9 this turn.
Even with a handful of 2 blocks, he can. It will be the whole hand plus what remains of that Flamescale Furnace. And then Tariq gets a 5 card hand to come back with, which is even scarier. So, Daniel has to think now, like, how do I find, like, randomly 1 damage from somewhere? Have I introduced you to my good friend Steelblade Shunt, Mr. Rutkowski? Maybe you're on the wrong deck, my friend. But look, again, I think, like, realistically from this position, this is now the fire getting put into the trash compactor. And getting beaten like a drum.
It's a really good visual. Let's see if Rutkowski can even get out of this. It looks like 2 cards from hand.
Oh, he has a sink.
And it looks like we're going to have, go to reaction. So he's going to have a card left over here. Oh, this is going to be nice. He's going to get out of this turn with a card left over.
Let me think. So now, if it's a card, if his last card is like a 0 for 4, then it's a little uncomfortable for the Oldham. I imagine it might be like a pitch to crown, make use of that Arsenal card.
It depends on what's in the arsenal, yeah.
It's got to be some gas. Okay, it's just a 3. So this
is easily
not being able to show a break
right.
point here feels a little bad, but I understand the position Dan's in.
It's doing something, right? He's like, hey, give me a card. Give me something. I'm still fighting. He's still clawing. He doesn't give up. There's no give up.
You can win games from this position for sure. Like I said, like a break point going towards Tariq, like a 4 damage card. All of a sudden, it's like the Oldham player has to give 2 of his own, unless he uses Crown, which he may elect to do in that situation. Just basically reducing the amount of cards that Tariq can come back at him with is pretty important. But this is definitely the rigor mortis about to set in, unbeknownst to the Fires. He valiantly trying to throw haymakers here.
And Tariq taking his time with this one here. Makes me maybe believe there's no just easy block attack back with something huge here.
There's definitely a sense of, I guess there's a sense of inevitability here. There are obviously dominate attacks available to the Oldham here, plus their presence of pummeling Rutkowski has to 8 block every Winter's Whale now. I think he's only seen 1 red pummel in order to not sort of just lose on the spot. So Crown is going to be used here. Okay, so Tariq just wants to get a better look at these cards and figure out like what kind of turn he's able to have. Command and Conquer here, obviously pretty bad because it's stuffed by 2 cards. Plus like there's no arsenal to target here. Again, a decent pummel, I get candidate, but Glacial fused here. No,
it's not fused. But if this is a red Glacial, this is still coming in for 10. So this is again, Rutkowski. Give me the whole grip, brother. There's still that 1 left over on that furnace. We'll see. Yep, looks like the furnace is finally coming out. 3 cards, so he is going to be 3 3s in a furnace. That's going to block all of it. Oh, no, it's going to put Rutkowski down to 0, it looks like.
Yeah, snatches a 2 block, man.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff is 2 blocks, actually.
Oh, and he drew Energy Potion too, so he drew a card that didn't block here as well. Tariq Patel going to win a really close one in life totals, 1-0.
Yeah, nicely played by Tariq there. I think you see how this matchup sort of plays back. It can be one that goes quite long, and for the Fire to try and find ways to go above and beyond, it's very difficult. When you're going up against a player like Tariq Patel, it can feel almost impossible. You don't get to keep an Arsenal card. You don't get to play 5-card hands. You don't even get to play 4-card hands when there's an Ice React in play a lot of the time. Tariq took every opportunity. It's pretty hard for me to see anything that Tariq could have done wrong there. He's just absolutely flawless. And we talk about Daniel Rutkowski getting this ultimate down to 1 because he squeezed every last drop of damage out of the cards he had available. A very difficult matchup for the Fire, and I'm very impressed to see it go as close as it does there. And some very big decision points, especially for Daniel on defense, figuring out how we can keep pressuring damage. And it's not the ideal matchup for Fire. It's quite difficult. And not having access to the Arsenal much of the time, not really getting any value with a Lava Burst there. Even that Salt the Wound turn, Tannon, saw how Tariq was able to make sure that Daniel got the least amount of value, blocking with equipment, just making sure that Phoenix Flame value wasn't going to be there. It's a masterclass, I think, of two decks at the opposite ends of the spectrum right now.
Yeah, and two masters of those decks as well. A lot to learn from watching either side of those games from those players and how to play those decks better. So if you're looking to play either one of those decks moving forward, yeah, there's gonna be some different cards in them, but the heuristics, like the things that you can learn from those players and how to play those decks, great stuff that you can pick up from there. That's going to be it for round 1 here in the Goliath Gauntlet. Now, don't forget, everybody, we're going to be taking next weekend off. The calling in Indianapolis is going to be going on, so we're going to let that kind of simmer for that weekend. So our next match, which would be the first match of round 9, that's going to be the weekend of February 10th.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about these matches very quickly now that our round of 16 is concluded. So obviously, Tariq Patel getting the win over Daniel Rutkowski, advancing. We'll take on Mara Faris at the Dromire versus Alton, another fascinating head-to-head. We've got Matt Rogers going up against Hayden Dale, which is a matchup across the Tasman Sea. That's right. It's going to be Australia, well, technically New Zealand versus New Zealand, but,
yeah,
New Zealand and Australia versus a New Zealander in New Zealand, going head-to-head. Two players that know each other really well. I think that's a very exciting matchup. Dash versus Briar. Fascinating stuff. And then we get teammates on the card, guys. Josh Lau taking on Nathan Crawford. Two players that know each other extremely well. I think they'll both have a good idea of what the other's game plan is going to be. So that's going to add some layers to that head-to-head. And then their last matchup is also fantastic. Brody Spurlock, obviously after his victory against the Tall Timmy, takes on our reigning Goliath Gauntlet champion, Tannon, Caleb Van Patten, in that last of our round of 8 matches.
Yeah, I was going to say, you want to make your name, Brody? Well, here you go, the defending champion. Good luck. So we'll see what's going to go on from there. But we would be remiss if we didn't say thank you to LSS for helping provide a great prize support here for the Goliath Gauntlet. They've got a gold foil Goliath Gauntlet for the winner here. Part of me kind of wants to see Matt Rogers win it because I want to see him actually play with it in a game. He's just
and he doesn't have to pay shipping.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't pay shipping. Yeah, he just gets to keep it. Yeah, but he's the kind of guy I could see him doing it in a camera match just for the lulz. He's like, you know what? This isn't probably the best maybe in this matchup, but we want to show off just a little bit. It would match all of its other graded equipment quite well.
Galvanic Bender might have pushed the Goliath Gauntlet out of the dash list, I think, for the time being. But also want to piggyback off that and give our thanks once more to FAB Cards, who without them we wouldn't have a Goliath Gauntlet 1 or 2. So big shout out to them. Thanks so much for supporting this tournament. Of course, FAB Cards is your go-to for all of your TCG needs. I definitely recommend if you're looking for singles, head over there, pick them up. They're a great mob running the store out of Utah. And again, everybody at home, hope you guys have a fantastic next weekend. Enjoy everything coming from the Calling Indianapolis. I know I'll be putting my feet up and enjoying the coverage for that tournament. And we'll see you on February 10th for a round of 8 here at the Goliath Gauntlet Flesh and Blood Invitational 2.